Good afternoon, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me yet again for another lovely episode. This is the lovely podcast, The Endurance of Labor Laws. This is episode 10, and I am your lovely host, Lesley Sullivan. And today we're diving into another labor union in the United States, and this one is pretty interesting. So this one is called the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. And let me silence my phone real quick. I apologize. I forget to do that. Let me put it on Do Not Disturb because this is important. So, okay, we are back. All right, so it's the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. And their slogan under their logo is "We Make America Happen." And I really like that. That is just a really positive way of putting America first, because when you put America first, you're helping workers, and I really like that. So let's take a look at this puppy. It says here they were founded in 1932. Their headquarters is in Washington, D.C. They have a little over 1.3 million members at this point. And so I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit here. It says the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, also known as AFSCME, is the largest trade union of public employees in the United States. So when it says public employees, that means you're not in the private sector. It says it represents 1.3 million public sector employees and retirees, including healthcare workers, corrections officers, sanitation workers, police officers, firefighters, and child care providers. Founded in Madison, Wisconsin in 1932, they are part of the AFL-CIO, one of the two main labor federations in the United States. It talks a little bit about the different presidents that they've had over the years. It says here the union is known for its involvement in political campaigns, which I don't agree with. They should not be involved in legislation or politics. That's not the purpose of a union. The union, its purpose is for workers' rights. And it says the union is known for its involvement in political campaigns, almost exclusively with the Democratic Party. Again, I don't agree with that. I don't think it should be representing either political party. Doesn't matter which one. Because their members can be a member of either party. The AFSCME was one of the first groups to take advantage of the 2010 Citizens United decision, which allowed unions and corporations to directly finance ads that expressly call for the election or defeat of a candidate. That is creepy. I don't know why that got passed or allowed, but that is a little disturbing. Because here's the thing, if it's not okay, or if it's looked down upon for lobbyists to have a say on the Capitol, like when they go up there to really talk about the company they work for, the company they represent, then how is it appropriate for unions to do the same thing, but within our elections? That's kind of creepy to me. So it goes on to say major political issues for AFSCME include single-payer healthcare. I find that weird because single-payer healthcare is not always the best healthcare. It really is not, because it doesn't cover everything. They say it does, but it doesn't. And also, their workers, they may not want a single-payer healthcare system. So if the union is expressively and directly supporting that, I imagine their members might feel some pressure about that. And their members may not know all the ins and outs of what a single-payer healthcare system actually means. So it's kind of like knowledge is power, and you need to use that power appropriately. So then it goes on to say that they really promote protecting pension benefits. I agree with that. Raising the minimum wage. Amen. I agree with that. Preventing the privatization of government jobs. I don't know much about that. The only thing I do know is that you have the public sector and the private sector, and when it comes to working for the government or through the government, sometimes the government hires private contractors. They have a ton of contracts out where they're not expressively or explicitly, whatever the word is, or directly working for the government. It's through a contract. So I'm not really sure what that means with privatization of government jobs, but if that needs to happen, then it needs to happen. Then it goes on to say extending unemployment benefits. That I agree with, but only for people that actually need it. Because unfortunately, sometimes people abuse the unemployment benefits, and that's not right. Because any abuse of money is just that. It's an abuse of money and taxpayer funds and things of that nature. And it says here, according to their website, AFSCME organizes for social and economic rights of their protectorates, I think that's how you pronounce that, protectorates, I think, in the workplace and through political action and legislative advocacy. It is divided into approximately 3,400 local unions in 46 U.S. states, plus the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. That is interesting. I didn't know that. So then it goes through a little bit of their history. It says they were formed out of the Wisconsin State Employees Association, also known as WSEA, which was founded in Madison, Wisconsin in 1932 to represent approximately 50 Wisconsin civil service employees. That's wonderful, because they should have representation. That's really good. The WSEA was launched amid fears of politically based firings within the state, the possible elimination of the civil service, and a return to patronage jobs. It says here, Arnold Zander, Wisconsin State Personnel Administrator, emerged as one of the early leaders of the union. Soon after its formation, WSEA was granted American Federation of Labor Charter as Federal Labor Union 18213. It says here, one of its first projects was to protect civil service jobs in Wisconsin after a newly elected Democratic legislature revealed its intention to eliminate Republicans from the civil service. The group succeeded with assistance from the American Federation of Labor, also known as AFL. And then it goes through each individual presidency, so I'll try and highlight the scoop with these. So let's see here. In the 1930s, AFSCME was primarily a union for white-collar civil service workers, including librarians, social workers, and clerical staff. These workers were legally without the right to collectively bargain, let alone strike. Then it goes on to say, the union grew slowly over the next several decades, gradually changing from an association formed to protect civil service systems to a union interested in collective bargaining. That is good, because money has power. So that is good there. Then it goes on to say how many chapters were increased and how many members and things of that nature. AFSCME was racially integrated in the 1960s and began to grow more quickly. It says here that during Worf's tenure, I guess that's one of the presidents of this union, it says that during his tenure, AFSCME became known as a pioneer in aggressively recruiting women and blacks. By 1969, AFSCME was unionizing 1,000 new workers each day. The organization saw its greatest period of growth in the 1970s. AFSCME continued to grow in the 1980s, unionizing university employees and nursing home staff and merging with other unions. In 1982, the union voted to endorse the passage of federal, state, and local legislation to extend civil rights to gay and lesbian citizens. In 1989, a third of the locals of the dissolving National Union of Hospital and Healthcare Employees joined AFSCME. In 1992, AFSCME was the first national union to back Bill Clinton in his presidential bid. AFSCME led an effort to oppose Clinton's signing of the North American Free Trade Agreement. I'm not surprised by that, because from what I understand about that trade agreement, it allowed for American jobs to be sent to other countries, which we're still having a problem with that now. Goes on to say, in the late 1990s, AFSCME expanded its membership to Puerto Rico and Panama. The union was an early supporter of Barack Obama's 2008 presidential campaign, which I disagree with. They should not be interfering with elections like that. Then I skip down to another section. Let's see what this says. Talks about who's being elected and the votes and how this person won, yada, yada, yada. Then it says how many local unions they have. See. It goes on to say, starting in the 2000s, AFSCME began campaigns to organize home-based family child care providers. In 2005, when former Illinois Governor Rod, and I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, I should know how to pronounce it, but I don't. I think it's I can't even say it. Blagojevich, I think, is how you pronounce it. I apologize for not pronouncing that right, but that governor, signed an executive order that allowed home child care providers to collectively bargain with the state. The move launched a turf war with the Service Employees International Union, also known as SEIU, battling AFSCME for the exclusive right to organize the workers. SEIU filed charges with the AFL-CIO against AFSCME, resulting in SEIU winning the right to unionize Illinois' home health care workers and resulting in AFSCME dropping its bid to do so. AFSCME represents 24,000 custodians, food workers, gardeners, and other campus service workers in the University of California system. In 2007, AFSCME resolved a 2-year dispute with the University of California that raised pay for the system's lowest paid workers. Amen. Good, because I bet if their pay was low, it was probably not good. So I look at it this way. If someone is considered to have low pay, you know they're not making $65K a year. You know it's probably like $24K a year, which is not really good. And it says here, since the late 1960s, AFSCME has become one of the most politicized unions in the AFL-CIO. Since 1972, AFSCME has been a primary force within the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, that's a little concerning, playing a major role in setting the legislative agenda and in choosing Democratic presidential candidates. Now that I completely disagree with, because it shouldn't be up to a union who the Democratic presidential candidate is. It's supposed to be the citizens of America decide who that candidate is. And within the Democratic Party, I just think that is such horrible manipulation. And unions are not being called out on that. Unions have a place, I agree with that. But not when it comes to politics and legislation. I think that's very creepy for it to do that, because that would be like a lobbyist trying to pick the Republican candidate. We don't allow that in the Republican Party. People can joke about it, but we don't allow lobbyists to pick our candidate. And I know that because I'm a Republican and I am a capitalist. Like, there's no way I would let somebody else decide for me who the candidate is going to be that I'm going to vote for. That just doesn't happen, because if you let stuff like that happen, then you don't have true freedom, and that's the problem. You want true freedom in the United States, and when you start doling out your freedom to organizations that may or may not have your back, you're already pretty much giving up your right to vote in a way. And that is really sad. Don't ever do that. That would not be good. It goes on to say, in the 1990s, AFSCME was the top U.S. donor to Bill Clinton. Then it says, according to the Center for Responsive Politics, AFSCME is the United States' 5th largest organizational contributor to federal campaigns and parties. That's disturbing. Having donated more than $126 million since the 1990 election cycle. That's a lot of money that's not going to its members. That's really disturbing. The organization contributes almost exclusively to Democratic Party campaigns. Again, doesn't seem very ethical to me. Since 1990, the ratio of Democratic to Republican contributions by the AFSCME has exceeded 99-1. In addition to combating privatization of public sector jobs, key political objectives for the group include raising the minimum wage, that I agree with, opposing the substitution of vacation pay for overtime pay due workers. It goes on to say, in June 2008, the AFSCME, along with MoveOn.org, spent over $500,000 on a television advertisement called Not Alex. I don't know what that is. I don't remember that. But it was critical of the presumptive Republican presidential nominee John McCain. And it says, until the 2010 Citizens United decision, funding for political campaigns came from voluntary contributions to a political action committee called AFSCME People, public employees organized to promote legislative equality. Well, right there, that's kind of hypocritical, because if you're trying to promote something legislatively and you're doing it within a union, then it's not equality, because you're not allowing your members to really decide what they want. It's coming from the top down, not the bottom up, and that's a problem. With the loosening of restrictions by this Supreme Court case, AFSCME has widened its political funding base through the use of member dues. That is disturbing with that. Because member dues, they're not paying for politicians. That's not what those monies that's not what those monies should be used for. AFSCME is not required to publicly disclose the identity of its donors or the size of their contributions. AFSCME was the biggest outside spender in the 2010 midterm elections, spending a total of $87.5 million in support of Democratic Party candidates. AFSCME led the failed 2012 recall effort against Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. In 2014, AFSCME cut ties with the United Negro College Fund, also known as UNCF, after UNCF accepted a $25 million contribution from Charles and David Koch. Starting in 2003, AFSCME had supported UNCF with annual donations of $50,000 to $60,000. In 2012, AFSCME, SEIU, and the American Federation of Teachers agreed on a politics-only alliance, that's disturbing, for the 2012 national election campaign. In 2016, AFSCME and SEIU announced an extension of that agreement, again that's disturbing, leading to speculation about a possible future merger. So, it's a good union. I think it's important for employees, especially within the public sector, to have a union because sometimes they need rights as well. Not sometimes, but all the times. But sometimes they do need to get together and talk about their jobs, the function of their jobs, their wages, and they have just as many rights as in the private sector. My only concern with unions like this is when they try and infiltrate our election process, our electoral college in a way, legislation, and then when they're trying to have rights within the union, which I agree with that, but if they're trying to overexpand their rights, then it's like they're trying to make it so that union workers have more rights than non-union workers. So that kind of creates some conflict between the public sector and the private sector when there should not be any conflict. Conflicts do happen, but I would think that as time goes by, we would have less and less because we know what we all want. We all want a really good job and really good pay. The problem is sometimes the employer, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector. Other times it's the market, it's the economy, and sometimes it's the mentality of society. An example of the last one is for years, women were not seen as equal to men, so they did not get equal pay, they did not get promoted, and they were treated like crap and dirt in the workplace. Excuse my language, but that's how it was. And sometimes that still happens, even in Oklahoma. Because I've noticed that when you work in the Bible Belt, sometimes it's very difficult to be treated as a business professional when you're a woman. It's just really difficult sometimes, and it's just bizarre to me. Because I look at it this way, whenever you're born in the United States, regardless of whether you're male or female, you get a social security number from the federal government. They assign you a number. And that is your number and nobody else's. It is directly assigned to you for your entire life. Unless you request a new social security number for whatever reason. You have to have a good reason to get a new one, but that number is specifically for you. And that's the number that is used for when you're filing taxes, also when you're applying for credit cards, when you're applying for a home loan, whatever the case may be. If we are all given social security numbers from the federal government, regardless of whether we're male or female, I would think that would signify that we're equals anyway. And that, our payroll gets processed the same, everybody has to pay taxes. Like, equality was already there way before the feminist movement really took off running in the 70s. Like, equality was already there. It just wasn't being acknowledged by society. That's what I mean by when the mindset of society is not where it should be. Because you can have laws and regulations there, you can have protocols there in place that are good and true. They can be good and true all day and all night, but if the mentality of the general public and of your society does not really want to acknowledge those protocols and those rights and those basically governances that are in place in terms of legislation, whether it's state, local, or federal, then that's where some of the problems come into play. Because, I mean, look at it this way. I cannot think of a single guy that's ever been discriminated against just because he was a man. Just because he had testicles. That probably sounds very crude to say that, but it's the truth. I've never met a man that ever got discriminated against because he was a man. I meet women all the time that have been discriminated against because they're a woman, or they get talked down to because they're a woman. They don't get a raise because they're a woman. Or, maybe they get treated bad at work because, they got pregnant, whether they're married or not, and they eventually need to take maternity leave. I don't know why employers can be so mean and cruel to someone because they're going to have a baby. That is one of the sickest things I've ever come across, and I've seen it at workplaces. It's really weird. And it just really shocks me. Like, there's this one girl I know. I say girl. She's a few years younger than me. I don't know her, like, super well, but we know each other through our parents. And, she is originally from Oklahoma. She moved to California, and she was working for this employer. And they didn't treat her that well once she got pregnant. It was really sad. And she actually missed out on a promotion, which this is completely unlawful. But she missed out on a promotion because she had a baby and was on maternity leave, and they knew she was coming back. They knew she was coming back and she wanted to work and she needed to work, like she wanted the job. But they overlooked her for a promotion because she had a baby, and the other person that was running for the job was a man. So they went ahead and gave it to him. I mean, they made some pathetic excuse for what they did. But, I mean, can you just imagine how disheartening that is, that because you had a baby that makes you less qualified than somebody else who can't give birth? I mean, that's where unions come into play. And that's sad that we have to have unions, protect workers above and beyond what your rights are in the Constitution, whether it's the Constitution of the United States or whether it's your state's Constitution, which I've never read the Constitution of California. I have for Oklahoma, but not for California. But, I mean, it's just one of those things where we shouldn't have to have unions to do the right thing. But unfortunately, sometimes society can be fickle, and sometimes you need someone that's in your court and that's got your back. What I don't like is when unions get off track and they start supporting things that may not be what every member wants. And then I notice that with unions, it's like whatever the top dogs, the higher ups in the union promote, like if they want the union to vote Democrat or to support a Democratic candidate, there's kind of this unwritten pressure on the members that, hey, if you're in a union, then, you're more than likely you're going to be a Democrat. Well, that's not true. It doesn't matter what party you're in, because a union is a union. Those rights apply to everybody, regardless of what political party they're in. But what I'm saying is that sometimes unions, they kind of very slyly give the impression that if you're in a union, you must be Democrat. And if you're in a union, you must be supporting a Democratic candidate. And, I'm pro-union all the way. But, I very rarely support a Democratic candidate. Just because most of the things that I think are best for our country stem out of the Republican Party. Now, the Republican Party is not a perfect party, not by any means. But neither is the Democratic Party. But I think in terms of job growth and a stable economy, the Republican Party has a better handle on that, because they believe in lowering taxes and helping people find good jobs. And some people are going, what? Republicans help people find good jobs? Yes, that means getting people off of social welfare programs and having them make way more money. Because there are programs that do that. We actually do have, at least in the state of Oklahoma, we do have some state programs that, if you were sick or became disabled or something of that nature, they actually have a state agency that helps you find work. And it's not like a socialized program kind of work. It's with an actual employer. And also, the state of Oklahoma, like when you file for unemployment benefits, which I've had to do a couple times, They have you create a profile. I think it's like on okjobmatch.com or org or something like that. And they list all of these jobs from jobs from every industry, from these different companies. The pay rates, vary greatly. Like if you want to make $60K, you can go look for a job on the state government website that posts private sector jobs. I mean, that's a really good thing to do, because not everybody can work for the state or for the federal government. And I'll repeat that. Not everybody can work for the state or federal government. And if there are people that are going, well, why not? Look at the USSR. Look at the Soviet Union. The Communist Party tried to force everybody. They actually did force people. They basically forced everybody to work a certain job and control their wages. So it's like you really didn't have control over what kind of job you wanted or what your natural skill set was. And I've talked about that in a previous podcast. But it is worth mentioning here because, the government is not the be-all, end-all. We, the people, are the government. That's very important, because if you don't have the people, then you don't have a government. But what is interesting is when the people, the citizens of the country, rely too much on their federal government. And that's the problem. Because, there's only so much the government can dole out. There's only so much money it can give to people. Why? Because there's only so much they can collect in taxes. And let's say the government collected everybody's income, like all of it. It still would not be enough for everything. Because when the government takes monies away from you, it's not creating wealth, it's not creating jobs. So that's why it's better for citizens the majority of citizens, probably 90 to 95% of the population, should be working in the private sector, not the public sector. Because the public sector cannot afford to have large populations working for the state, local, or federal government. It's just not possible. It doesn't work. And we know it has failed in other countries. So, unions have their place, and I think they do a really good job. I just wish that unions would focus on helping the private sector get where it needs to be, and not try and push things to the public sector. Because that's what it's doing when it's talking about a single-payer healthcare system. That's trying to push people into the public sector. That's not where really great healthcare is. Excellent healthcare is in the private sector, where you have insurance companies, you have hospitals, you have doctors, you have surgeons, you have all these people who have their own practice. They're generating their own revenue. And they're employing way more people, and they're offering way better benefits than a public healthcare plan. And we know this because of Medicare and Medicaid, which we've talked about in previous podcasts. Medicare and Medicaid are some of the worst health insurance policies in this country. And that's really sad, because there are so many people on Medicare and Medicaid, and they don't deserve the 1-star or 2-star treatment. They deserve and should receive the 5-star treatment. Regardless of whether they can afford it or not, the government has promised them health care. And my personal opinion is that if they make promises like that, they need to provide the best possible health care ever. And that includes being able to see their doctors, going to the hospital, and getting access to their medications. Getting access to those prescriptions. Because the way that they limit access is they deny it. They deny the claim, with the pharmacy and say, oh, it's not covered. Or they say you need a prior authorization, and then they keep trying to send out these prior auths over and over and over again to the doctor. It drives the doctor's office nuts. In the meantime, the patient is delayed medical care. And part of that medical care is getting on a prescription that they are supposed to be on to help them either control the condition that they have or cure them of the condition that they have. But because these federal programs don't really want to pay for health care, they try and weed people out by delaying health care. And to me, that is extremely cruel. Like when a health insurance company does that in the private sector, they're called evil, they're called greedy. But when the federal government does it, there's no accountability to it. None whatsoever. Every once in a while, a story will break on the news about something, but it's always extreme shaming and blaming when it happens in the private sector, but it's not like that in the public sector. And I think that's a huge mistake because that's playing nepotism. That's playing favorites. We're not supposed to have favorites. We're not supposed to have favoritism because that's not equality. That's not equal rights. That's not equal pay. And that's not justice. That's just my personal opinion on that. But, a lot of those things are what happens in people's daily lives. And if some of those issues and problems are happening in someone's daily life, just imagine how sick of it they are, how frustrated they are. Most people just want a good paying job, really good full-time hours. They're willing to work overtime if they get the time and a half overtime. They want really good benefits. Most people, I think, are willing to pay for those benefits, but they just want the benefits, the healthcare benefits, to be reasonable. Like, most people are genuinely kind. Most people are not slackers. Most people are not slothful. Most workers just really want to work hard and work hard till they retire and be able to retire. But unfortunately, some of these business practices, whether it happens in the private sector or the public sector or within unions, it really affects our economy. And it affects legislative decisions, unfortunately. It just does. And that doesn't mean I think certain people should be involved in that. I do not. But, there are things that happen in people's everyday lives that impacts their lives for the rest of their life. And sometimes it is financially a strain. So what I like about unions is that, they're supposed to help buffer that strain by helping workers increase the value of their labor. Because someone's going to make that money, it might as well be the worker. That's my opinion. Because who does the grunt work? The worker. Big time. So I think it is reasonable and appropriate for workers to make more money in a reasonable way. What I don't like about unions is when they strong arm or get politically aggressive or when they get aggressive at all. I just think that's a huge mistake. Because, when you get aggressive, that doesn't make people want to work with you. It makes people want to work against you. So if you really want to take care of your members, do the right thing, learn how to negotiate, and be reasonable. That to me seems pretty simple. And I've seen it work in other areas, but it just seems like sometimes unions, they get so bullheaded and stubborn. It's like they almost have this mindset, it's either my way or the highway. Well, that's not really how life works. It just isn't. So, anyway, I'll close with some positive affirmations because I keep forgetting to read that at every podcast because I love this. And again, it's the I Am app. I'm going to open this puppy up. And so I'm going to read a couple of these to you because I think these are absolutely wonderful because it greatly helps me. And so here we go. I am heading in the right direction with my life. I am an intelligent person that makes good decisions. I am grateful for all the money flowing into my life. I believe in my dreams and my ability to achieve them. I love that. I am happy and free because I am me. I am charismatic and magnetic. I love that. I am in control of my future and will succeed. I love that one. That is so true. Because I think that sometimes we forget that we do have control and we can always have a better life. So it's important to remember the good things that you have and the good things that you want and just keep striving to push forward. And I don't mean striving in like a negative way. I mean like just really focus on what you want. And as long as it's good and holy, I would say, be a good holy person. But as long as it's based on a good holy kindness and having peace in your heart, I say the sky is the limit to how much money you can make and where all you can go in your life. If you want to make a lot of money and see the world, I say go for it. Just go for it. That's wonderful. They have a saying, the world is your oyster. It is so true. We have a really large planet. I say go for it. Live your dreams. Be your best. Do your best. Have a heart of gold and just keep pushing forward in your life and live your life to the fullest. I think that's a wonderful thing. So until next time, have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. And I pray that you're happy, blessed, whole, and that you're very prosperous in everything that you do. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.